Okay, Mr. Phobes here. This is going to be a tutorial on how to do our spatial illusion project. So this is completely digital. None of this is going to be painted. The objective is to create the illusion of deep space using one or two similar shapes. And we're going to do this by scale change, overlap, value change to create this low contrast towards the ground to create atmospheric perspectives. So all of that is going to come into play to create this illusion of deep space. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go a new file, and you could make multiple artboards for clarity. I'm just going to do one. I'm going to have the color setting at RGB. It doesn't really matter since we're working in grayscale. If you go to more settings, let's make the raster effects at 300 and then create document. Okay, a couple of things here, and I want to explain this that is very helpful. If you see, so I've got my toolbar, but I also have a palette bar or a menu bar of the different windows that are open. So this one you can see is libraries, this is appearance, this is graphic styles. What's important is that I've got transparency, I've got strokes, I've got image trace, I've got the swatches, and then I've got color. Okay, the one thing I still need, and I just want to show you how to turn this into these convenient little icons. So I need to bring in my layers. So I'm going to go Window, and then I'm going to go Layers. Okay, and it comes in as the full layer panel. But if I click the little collapse icons here, it turns into this. And then what I can do is I can drag it over to the side here, and now they're conveniently located, easy to see. All right, so just to double check, make sure your application frame is checked. That will show the entire application. Make sure layers are checked. Make sure that transparency is checked. Make sure that image trace is checked, and make sure that swatches is checked. All right, so that's right here. I've got the transparency, image trace, swatches, and then layers. Okay, so let's bring in our first object. So I'm going to go File, Place. I'm going to bring this little guy in, and then the image trace icon comes up. I want to trace it as a silhouette. If it didn't take the white background off, go to the panel and go to Advanced and make sure that Ignore White is checked. All right. Okay. So the other thing we have to do is we have to expand the object, and then that way it's editable in terms of its values. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make him really big. I want to force the picture plane here, like he's really coming out of the picture plane. I'm going to make my highest contrast towards the foreground. Okay, so I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm going to hit the Option key. I'm on one of the selection tools, Option, Select, and then drag, and that makes a copy. Now, let me bring up my swatches here. I'm going to bring up my color, and what I did was on the color, I changed it to grayscale. So this does two things. Now I've got a uninterrupted value range, plus I have my 10-step value scale. So I want to turn this guy probably into this value here, to make it a little bit readable. Now, you know that it needs to overlap, so the only way to do that is I'm going to have to go to Object, and I'm going to go to Arrange, and I'm going to go Send Backwards, and now he's underneath. I need to reduce the scale, and maybe to give a little variety, I'm going to flip him. So I'm going to go Object, Transform, Reflect. I'm going to reflect around the vertical axis. Okay. And then maybe make them a little smaller. Again, I'm working in open form composition, so maybe it'd be helpful if this guy comes off. You know, it might be helpful to make him a little bit lighter. Let's make a copy of him, and range, send backwards. I'm going to scale them down. You know, maybe I'm going to create a little bit of variety. I'm going to tilt him. Maybe I'm going to reflect him. And you know, I need to change his value again, right? And I'll just keep going and doing this. Okay, at this point, I have my arrangement. I can still keep moving them around. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 objects. If you do more than 6 or 7, you're not going to have enough value range to create contrast between. I need to create a ground that's not white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another layer. I'm going to bring it below the top layer. I'm going to lock the top layer, and I'm going to select maybe this gray value here. And I'm going to go to the rectangle tool, and I'm going to just drag a rectangle down across the entire object. And you see what happens is now this is a little bit darker than my, and this is okay, but maybe I want to make it just a little bit lighter. Now you see what happens is that the other two, which are the same value, disappeared. Not to worry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lock my background layer, and I'm going to go back to my top layer, and I'm going to go to my selection tool, and I'm going to find these guys right there, and then there's one right there. So I'm going to select it, and let me bring this value up, and then let me bring this value up again. Okay. We don't want them to be the same value. So this is where the transparency will come in to give you some subtle change in value. This is probably okay. But what I can do is if I go to the transparency tool, let me change this transparency a little bit. And that's sort of a subtle way of bringing the value down. Look at that. Need to select him. So he's just barely there. All right. This isn't terrific, but you know it solves the problem. I'm sure you're going to be more creative than this, but it does create that illusion of space. Now what we want to do is save this, and so select the artboard tool, and that selects the artboard. You know, if you wanted to keep playing around with this, I would certainly save it first as a Illustrator file. Call it Eagles, save, and then OK. And then to print it, we want to save it as a PDF. So we're going to go File, Save As. And because we have the artboard selected, it's going to do that. But I'm going to go Save As PDF. And then I'm going to go Save. And I'm going to replace the one that I have. If you want to see what it looks like, click on View PDF after saving, and then go Save PDF, and there it goes. That's exactly what it looks like. Okay, so this is the file you're going to send to CalCopy to print, and that's it.